Hey, howdy do out there everyone, my name is Michael and welcome to the Dude Corner where I do the doodles for practice and fun. Today, at long last, I wanted to share with you the culmination of months of accumulated work over the last year. Well over 12 hours of design time since I began the project, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but it was spread over a very long time since I began it, and I think it's a good time to present it now as we're mid-ski season. So, very early in 2024, I started making patches for Alpine Viking again. We communicated very slowly, so it took a long time for each iteration to get through, and each time I thought we were done with the project, we actually weren't, and I was asked for a new set or given another job. That's all well and good, really. It just meant I couldn't post anything until now, because I've been waiting for the right time, I suppose, when there weren't any more updates and I could post the whole thing as one project. And it seems, because of ski season, that there won't be any updates for a while now, so now's the perfect time. There are 3 major segments, which technically all happened almost simultaneously, but I've broken them up into the bridge, the general patches, and the Sunday River patches. The bridge sort of came out of left field for me. I never would have expected the company to want a copy of the bridge that fell in Maryland, but apparently they wanted the design to commemorate the bridge and use it on their patches or something. I don't really know, but I got all that done. The bridge was actually really fun to draw. It's the first time, I think, that I ever tried something like it. Admittedly, I just traced a reference, but I think it was still pretty cool to see it all come together in the silhouette. And it was very fun to learn the structure and play with the geometry and try to figure out the best way to simplify the representation. The hardest part was actually finding reference. I was asked to make it only a few days after the bridge had fallen, and the only pictures on all of Google that I could find at that point was of either a river or wreckage. Literally every good image of the bridge was scrubbed off by the media meltdown over the thing falling. But I was able to scrounge together off of some historical pages enough images that I could make the thing, and I did the project. It was one of my favorites of these bunches because of how I got to play with the silhouette and cartoonize the angled one in creative ways to represent its 3 dimensions without just showing a black silhouette of the thing exactly as it was. The first rounds of patches were started well before the bridge, but I've consolidated them into one unbroken stretch. I think this is a bit of a trend for me and Viking. I just don't know what they want. It's a business relationship over email with long periods of inactivity between revisions, and I think we just don't talk on the same wavelength. My follow-up questions usually don't help me as much as they just confuse me more, so these patches take a lot out of me, and that's why there's so many iterations of them that all end up going in the garbage can. I still enjoy making them, I just have to make a lot of them. Good news is, I usually get really good reference from Viking. Even if I can't grasp their vision through an email, I always get good pictures to start from. With these patches, the way I normally go, considering the workflow between us, I use quick image traces and pre-made assets to really quickly cobble together something that easily resembles the reference, with the new color palette or my own little flair or whatever little adjustment that I was asked to make. I think that's been a good way to work because it gets them an idea really fast, and it's also good learning for me. For instance, the snow I used. I learned how to use brushes in Illustrator for the first time here and these patches to make that snow. I never did that before, and for good reason. I don't like brushes or how they work in Illustrator, but they're good for snow, sometimes. So there's a lot of things I learn about the program that I can use as little tricks to speed up the ideation process as I move along, and get creative with how to represent things without putting so much wasted time into an idea that probably won't make the cut anyway. The cool thing is, too, about this particular moment is if you watch how I draw these really graphically styled mountains throughout each patch, that's the start of my experimentation with this new style that I talked about in the Redemption Arc video. Chronologically, I think this is where all that development began, and it was using these patch references that Viking gave me that I dissected the pattern and style of that led me to developing my own style almost 12 months on later down the line. So you've all been seeing that development out of order, and this is the first time that I'm even noticing it myself. But I do think that's fascinating, and it's the reason I make these videos, to see exactly where the spark came from, and see the development stage by stage. Though perhaps slightly out of order, a timeline of my progress as an artist, which I think is very cool. There are so many patches flying by, it's impossible to talk about each individually. That would also be kind of boring because there's not much to say on each individual one. However, there is one patch that stays on screen for a very long time, and that is the Maine State patch, based on a topographical image of Maine, which I was given by Viking, and I had to simplify into something that could be embroidered. This patch, by far, I think, took the longest. It was also the most extensively iterated on. While most patches came and went into the garbage without a second thought, this one maybe counts as another sub-segment all on its own, actually. It was a separate project technically, if I remember correct, or more like an extension added onto the end of all the other patches. Either way, this one I made the most of the base of, in history class actually, where instead of learning history, I learned this fantastic trick for Illustrator that I've been using ever since. I say that curves suck in Illustrator, and that is because they are hard to edit, cut, or build on top of and line up exactly once they're made, because curves don't snap into place cleanly on anything. And that's the big one for me. They don't snap onto anything, and I can't just make new curves and snap them on top of old ones. It just gets messy, and they don't work that way. They try to, but in practicality, they just don't. And for me, trying to be so clean about all of my lines all the time, it really is a disaster to use curves. However, lines have points, and points can snap onto other points and other lines, which can also be cut and turn into more lines and more points, which never becomes an issue, other than for maybe lag, which hasn't really been a problem for me so far. So I discovered that I could just go around the rough outline of each color zone on the map and spam click with my mouse like absolute crazy. The thing is, at that scale, it looks curved, and recently I've been incorporating curves back into some elements sparingly to really clean up certain lines, but this trick works for me on most shapes and accidentally adds a level of random that makes it more organic than a contrived curve might have been. It's everything against what I was taught at MCC, that your design should be minimal, the smallest file size, the most efficient lines and curve structure. That has merit on its own, I get it. But this procedure produces results, and fast, and easy to edit, and if I really want curves later on, once I've defined all of the shapes with this technique, I can just go back over and make the curves. So it's kind of like sketching for vector. At the end of the ski main patch is where the Sunday River stuff starts to come in. I had started making Sunday River designs here at the end as a sort of throwaway concept when I was trying to make more patches for Viking, but that came in handy later when, months down the line, after I thought this was all well and done and I'd started planning the video, I was paused by another email asking specifically for Sunday River patches. So I booted up that massive file, copy-paste into a new one, and started work on Sunday River patches, which went much more poorly than the last. See, this segment is much shorter and feels sorta like I failed a bit. Maybe the design was just doomed to fail from the beginning and Viking just didn't like the idea, but I was told to concept up an exact copy of the Aspen patch that I was given as reference, but to make it Sunday River. They even gave me a reference of their own version, which is, again, identical, it just replaced the word Aspen with Sunday River, which I was supposed to make a cleaner version of, and I did. I even found Sunday River's exact logo font, which I scoured the internet for and found. Then, for the next 3 phases of this project, the next 3 back and forths, I was asked to move the sun around, change the font, the text size, squish the bands a few times, and eventually, at the last iteration, Viking canceled the project. I guess it just wasn't going the way they wanted, or maybe they realized the design wasn't going to work for them? It was a very specific project, which is out of the ordinary for what we usually do, so I think they had a vision and really wanted to see me make a clean version of it, which I did many times over, and I think in the end they just didn't like what they saw. Maybe it was one of those things where you see an idea in your head and it just doesn't look right on paper, or maybe I was translating the message wrong somewhere along the way, or it could have just been that ski season was coming too close and making a new patch at that point was infeasible. I think I did alright, but this one ended up getting nowhere, and it's the last one that I did for this year, so I kind of ended on a feeling like I flopped. That happens sometimes, but it wasn't all for naught, because these are the ones that made the final cut, and I think they're pretty cool, and I definitely enjoyed making them. So, I finally get to lay that massive file to rest, at least for some time, and I finally get to post this video, which has been a really long time coming. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm closing in on finishing posting all of my 2024 work, and as per your comment suggestions, I'm going to be making a reel of all of my 2024 work to the most accurate chronological order I can manage, which will probably just be the order I posted the videos. Thanks for putting up with my random upload schedule. School, specifically the Blender class, has been very intensely time-consuming, but good news is there's nothing I do for school that I can't turn into a video eventually. So, if you made it to the end here with me, I thank you with all the immensity of a very rotund baby doge. Thanks for watching, have a good day, and without further ado, farewell.